Hey guys, it's Dan from EFC. Welcome back to our intro series in executive functions. I've been an EF coach for almost 10 years now, and my goal in the next couple of months to next couple of years is to provide as much helpful resources out there for executive functions and for those that have challenges with executive functions. So in this video, just like the other ones, I won't be able to cover everything that I've ever gone through or all the different situations and all the different strategies. But my goal is to start the conversation and start engaging with those that have these challenges. So if the video is insightful or helpful or engaging, or you have anything that relates to what I talk about, go ahead and comment down below, and we will definitely answer and make more videos regarding any questions that you guys all have out there. If you like what I talk about, like and subscribe, and let's go ahead and jump into it. So like all the other videos, we're going to have 5 different parts to this series. The first part is going to be the definition of working memory and what that really means. The second part is going to be the perception of working memory to those that don't have working memory. The third part is going to be the perception of working memory to those that have working memory. The fourth part is going to be a strategy that I use to help others with working memory challenges. And the fifth part, which is the last part, is going to be if you're a supporting figure in those that have working memory challenges, what I would suggest you guys do to help those with those challenges. And if you stay until the end, then I'll give you guys my 2-minute hot take on working memory. And let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so what is the definition of working memory? So my own definition of working memory is our brain's ability to hold memory, take that short-term memory, relate it to something that we can recall, and then integrate all that information for an appropriate response. And I know that for a lot of us, this comes naturally. It's pretty natural for some of us to just go into a conversation or read an assignment and be able to relate it to past conversations, past assignments, and create an appropriate response either by doing the assignment correctly or responding to whoever you're talking to correctly. But it's actually very complicated to do this correctly when you have working memory challenges. And I want to illustrate this with a very common example that I think almost every introvert out there can probably relate to. So let's kind of set the scene here. I'm invited to my best friend's birthday party. And, I haven't seen my best friend for maybe 5 years in person or so. So he's gotten new friends like we all do, right? But obviously he's invited other friends that we all know. But as I walk into the party, I realize that none of the friends that I know are there yet. And naturally speaking, I would like to just sit in the corner and enjoy a nice drink until my friends are here, because I don't really want to meet new people. But my best friend starts introducing me to new people. And what actually starts happening is I start freaking out. I get stressed out because I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what they like to talk about. And I start running through all these thoughts of like, am I being weird? Am I being awkward? Am I giving an appropriate response? And this all has to do with a working memory challenge for the specific situation of social occasions, at least for myself. So let's actually walk through what is actually going on in my brain during a social occasion. Well, when somebody says something to me or says something to the group, what I have to do is I have to take in that information, that memory, and I have to then relate it to something that I remember in my past. So for example, if somebody is talking about fine wine, I have to try to remember something about wine, and I know nothing about wine. Maybe, that wine is good for blood circulation or something. So I have to relate it to something I know. And then I have to keep listening as I'm relating it and start to integrate the information for an appropriate response. But it doesn't really end there, right? After I give an appropriate response, I have to then look for social cues. Am I getting social cues of acceptance, or am I getting social cues of rejection? And from the acceptance and rejection, there's actually working memory components in there as well. How do we know something is being accepted? How do we know something is being rejected? Well, we have to take that cue we're getting and relate it to memories that we've had in the past of being accepted and being rejected. And then we are able to then formulate a happy response of, oh, wow, they liked what I said about blood circulation. Cool. They are scientific people or something. Or they rejected it because it's like super awkward and they have no interest in how red wine increases blood circulation. But this process keeps going on. That's like maybe like the first 10 seconds of the interaction. So as you can imagine, for those that are introverted or have social anxiety or have anxiety in general, when we enter situations that cause us stress, I think that's the emphasis, is that, you don't have to have EF challenges specifically. You don't have to have a diagnosed executive function deficit to really have working memory challenges. Anybody that has a stressful situation that they're in can have working memory challenges. Every individual that is an introvert can probably relate to what I just talked about. Now, if you're an extrovert, this probably makes no sense to you, but I guarantee you that there's an occasion out there that really stresses you out. Maybe you're not a great test taker. So when you enter into a testing situation, you sit down and you start the exam, everything blinks. That's working memory because you can't look at the immediate information of the prompt of the question and draw it to things that you've learned in the past to come up with an appropriate response, which is either A, B, C, or D. And if your teacher's evil, E, right? So I hope that kind of made sense. Because I think that working memory is something that almost everybody that comes in as a client that is coming in for a consultation will say that they have working memory challenges. And I don't not believe them because they probably do. But their conception of what working memory really means is a lot of the times inaccurate. So I think it's important to really define what working memory is before we dive into the rest of this video. But now that we have, hopefully it makes sense. Now let's go ahead and talk about the perception of working memory to those that don't have working memory. So what is the perception of those that don't have working memory challenges? I think the best way to illustrate at least the personal aspect or the social aspect of this is, let's go ahead and envision ourselves as the one observing me at my best friend's birthday party. What will you think of me? You'll probably think that I'm a little bit awkward, that I don't have much to say or much to contribute. And maybe because I'm super spacey and super frustrated about the whole conversation, I'm going to say something completely inappropriate and you'll have the impression that I'm inappropriate. And that's generally actually what happens when it comes to, first encounter social occasions with those that have working memory challenges. Now, that may sound really bad, but I do want to say that generally speaking, those that have working memory challenges, they're able to form very good, long-lasting relationships with those that really understand who they are and how they function. And there's nothing too detrimental to the social life because they're able to have nice, long-term relationships. But I do think what actually ends up becoming very detrimental as far as to the perception of the outside world for those that have working memory challenges is the professional or the academia realm of things. So let's kind of talk about this on the academics first. So as you can imagine, working memory challenges are going to be rather consistent from elementary school to middle school to high school. And these challenges are going to become stronger and stronger as an individual progresses through their academia all the way into college and professionally, etc. So let's talk about how individuals with working memory challenges actually receive instruction on an assignment, as an example, and how the teacher might perceive the individual with the working memory challenge. So when somebody takes an instruction for a math assignment or for a chemistry lab or etc., what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to take in that information, hold it there long enough to draw a connection to a previous experience that they've had, to then have an appropriate response to do the assignment correctly or to respond correctly with the question. And I think what is not very well understood or not very well talked about is the idea that because there's working memory challenges all throughout academics, that middle step of relating it to relevant academic examples is actually very hard to do for individuals with working memory challenges because they don't actually have many good positive memories associated with academics. So that middle step is very hard. So more than likely, what is going to happen is that the individual working memory challenges will end up maybe not even turning in an assignment. They may end up turning in the wrong assignment and have to completely redo the assignment, etc. And, what will actually end up happening is that the teacher is going to end up feeling like the individual working memory challenges is unable to be independent. They are unable to follow instructions correctly. And there's also a wariness of, hey, am I going to have to give out a failing grade again because they didn't do the right thing? Or, should I just accept that whatever assignment they turn in is at least they did something, And is that passing them along, is that the right decision? And is that the best academic decision for the student? And it becomes a very conflicting discussion amongst teachers, I think. And this discussion is translated to the professional realm when it comes to the supervisor of the individual working memory challenges. As you can imagine, even if the job that the individual is doing is something that they're truly, truly passionate about and they're very excited about, they still have a very good likelihood of misunderstanding instruction because that middle step of relating it to relevant information is not very strong. The ability to do that is not very strong. Now, this leads individuals that are working with individuals working memory challenges to feel like, hey, am I just going to get some random assignment? Am I going to get some sporadic behavior from this individual? And is this individual going to be able to be independent in work? Or am I going to have to micromanage and constantly supervise and constantly clarify if they understand the instructions? And if I have to do that, why don't I just do the work myself? What's the point of having this person help out? And, it leads, much like the teacher example, leads supervisors to come to this conundrum of, I really like this individual. When they do the work and they do it correctly, it's fantastic. But they oftentimes don't do it correctly. So what is the right call to either support this individual that I really want to keep as an employee, or do I have to end up letting this individual go? And that's kind of the realm of the perception of how individuals that don't have working memory perceive those that have working memory challenges. But I think that if we can hopefully feel the frustration that comes from those that are working with the individuals with working memory challenges, maybe we can also relate that to how frustrating it actually really is for the individuals that have working memory challenges. So let's go ahead and talk about that. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and talk about the perception of those that have working memory challenges. I think that it shouldn't be hard for us to understand that individuals with working memory challenges oftentimes feel very confused, followed by frustration, followed by a lot of anger. And this goes the case with social occasions, and it goes the case professionally. Let's talk about the social aspects first. So, if you can imagine the situation that I talked about in the social aspect, when an individual working memory challenges gives enough inappropriate responses, individuals around them will give them the social cues that eventually they're going to recognize as not a good social cue. Maybe in the beginning, they feel like they're really on the roll with whatever they're talking about, and they feel like individuals are really engaging, they're laughing, they're happy, etc. But at some point, if enough inappropriate responses are given, the individuals will also respond with negative cues, negative social cues. Maybe people will start having angry faces or walk away from the conversation or laugh at the individual, whatever it is. And the individual working memory challenges, they go from a state of like, oh, I'm doing really well on this social occasion, to like, wait, what's going on? How come people don't like me anymore? And then they get frustrated, like, what is really going on? Why are people walking away from me now? To just being angry at themselves and feeling very discouraged about the next social occasion that they may be invited to or may not be invited to. So yes, individuals with working memory challenges have a very, very hard time with new social interactions. They have a very, very hard time building social interactions. But I do think that individuals with working memory challenges, once they build the relationships, which does take a lot of effort on their end, once the relationships are built, they are long-lasting relationships. If you can imagine the amount of effort that goes into it on both parties, of those that have the challenge and those that don't have the challenge, it takes a lot of effort on both ends. And that's why when the relationship is there, it's a very strong one. And it's most likely a lifelong relationship. Now, on the professional side of things, individuals with executive function challenges in general are not able to really do jobs that they're not fairly passionate about. They're not able to keep those jobs. And when they are able to finally get to that job that is their dream job, the one that drives them, that brings them a bunch of passion, that gives them purpose, they're going to be excited about every single new assignment that they get. But they go through a similar path of confusion, frustration, anger, at times when their working memory for the instruction given from the supervisor is not strong. Let's walk through that. What ends up happening is that they'll get the instruction. They'll feel like they really understand it. They'll feel super excited, super motivated, super passionate about this new assignment. And what will happen is that, one, they'll get it done right, fantastic. But the other end is that because that step of relating it to relevant information, or holding the memory, right, holding the instruction, and then relating it to relevant information, and then giving an appropriate response, that appropriate response, usually when given instructions from a supervisor, is going to be a question. And because individuals with working memory challenges have a very hard time formulating questions in general, and formulating questions fast enough that instructions can be given in like 2 seconds, and there's not enough time for the individual to process it enough to formulate a question, to then ask the question, and then to continually do that process over and over again for them to fully understand what's going on. And of course, there's an amount of advocacy that's involved in order for the supervisor to understand how to give instructions, and for the individual with working memory challenges to understand how to ask questions. And that's what I do a lot when I coach my clients. But in the beginning, what ends up happening is that they get the assignment and they understand the gist of the assignment, and they get really excited. They get really passionate. They spend hours on this assignment, and they end up presenting this assignment to their supervisor, and the supervisor is confused. The supervisor is like, what did you just turn in, dude? Like, did you understand? Did you listen? Because whatever you gave me is nothing on point of what I actually requested. And in the beginning, when this happens, the individual working memory challenge is like, oh, my bad. Let's go ahead and clarify, redo it. But when this happens enough, as you may be able to imagine, when you spend so much time on something you're passionate about, and the person that is the one that tells you if what you spend your time on was actually worth it, tells you that what you spent your time on was not worth it and was actually a complete waste of time that you had to redo. If that happens to you enough times, how will you feel? Probably very frustrated, and at some point, very angry. And at some point, after a point of anger, your coping mechanism is just going to end up being, I'm going to just say yes, just say that I understand whatever it is that my supervisor is telling me. And I'm just going to walk into the meeting, and hopefully whatever I did was correct. And when that happens enough, a certain amount of anxiety is going to start developing for those that have working memory challenges. The anxiety of, well, what's going to be the outcome of my work? Is it going to be a, hey, good job, or hey, scrap it, redo it? And that anxiety becomes so overwhelming at times that individuals, even if they really love their jobs, end up having to leave the jobs that they're very passionate about because they don't have the right structure to support their working memory challenges. So let's actually talk about one of those structures in the next section of this video. Or actually not this section, because part 2, the next video. All right, talk to you guys then.